When the world said goodbye to Ozzy Osbourne on July 22nd, 2025, it felt like the closing of a chapter that could never be rewritten. His voice, his madness, his humor, and his raw stage presence had defined heavy metal for half a century. Yet even as fans mourned, whispers began to circle. Not everything had been heard. Somewhere in private collections, rehearsal tapes, and studio vaults, there are Ozzy-era Black Sabbath songs. Pieces of music that never saw the light of day, songs that could still breathe new life into the band's legacy. And the strangest part? Some of these songs might have been closer to release than anyone realized. Black Sabbath was notorious for long, chaotic recording sessions. The band, especially in the 1970s, would jam for hours, tape rolling, capturing fragments of riffs, verses, and melodies. Tony Iommi, the riff master himself, often said, "I record everything." Even mistakes. Sometimes mistakes turn into the best parts of the song. Those tapes didn't all make it onto the albums. For every Paranoid, or Children of the Grave, that fans know by heart, there are fragments, unfinished choruses, strange experiments, riffs that sounded too heavy or too strange for the record label. And because Sabbath changed producers often, multiple versions of songs were left half-finished in studio archives. Insiders have long whispered that there are at least 10 to 12 unreleased Ozzy-era tracks, some recorded fully with vocals, others just raw jams. One of the most discussed tracks is Slap Back, a funky, blues-heavy jam that surfaced from the Heaven and Hell era sessions in 1979. While Ozzy had technically left by then, fans still argue about whether earlier vocals exist. Then there are rehearsal tapes from the mid-70s, where Iommi experimented with unusual tunings, and Geezer, Butler scribbled down lyrics that never went beyond the demo stage. Even more mysterious are the so-called California Jam sessions. In 1974, Sabbath performed at the legendary California Jam Festival, but before that show, they reportedly recorded several experimental songs that never left the rehearsal space. A roadie once claimed he held onto a cassette of one of those tracks, a slow, doom-laden piece Ozzy jokingly titled the Haunted House song. Whether that tape still exists, no one knows. And then there's the 1980s material. Before Ozzy went fully solo, he and Iommi briefly tried patching things up. They wrote at least 2 songs together, but the tapes were shelved when Sharon pushed Ozzy toward his solo career. Those demos are rumored to be in Iommi's personal collection to this day. The obvious question is, if these songs exist, why didn't we ever hear them? Part of it comes down to the chaos of Black Sabbath's history. The 70s were filled with substance abuse, record label fights, and lineup changes. Many songs simply weren't finished because the band was barely holding itself together. Another reason is quality control. Sabbath had a reputation to uphold, and both Ozzy and Iommi were perfectionists in their own ways. If something didn't feel Sabbath enough, it was buried. Geezer once said in an interview, "We had loads of ideas, but not all of them were meant for the fans. Some were just us messing about." But after Ozzy's death, fans can't help but wonder, even if they're raw, even if they're messy, wouldn't we rather hear them than let them rot in a vault? This is where things get really interesting. Tony Iommi has been known to revisit old material. In fact, for the 2016 The End Tour, he remixed and released rare songs that had never appeared on studio albums. With the emotional weight of Ozzy's passing, it's not unthinkable that Iommi might curate an album of unreleased Ozzy tracks, both as a tribute and as a gift to fans. Imagine a record titled Stay With Us, the lost songs of Ozzy and Sabbath. A haunting, final chapter where fans hear Ozzy sing words that were once locked away in dusty tapes. Not polished, not perfect, but real. The raw energy of a band inventing heavy metal as they went along. Sharon Osbourne herself hinted, back in 2019, that she knew of recordings no one's ever heard. She brushed it off as something for the family archives. But now, with the world mourning, could those archives finally open? Think about it. Ozzy's last live performance was at Villa Park in Birmingham, July 5th, 2025. 17 days later, he was gone. That concert, filmed and set for release in 2026, is already being described as his final bow. But if unreleased studio tracks exist, fans could get something even more haunting. Ozzy's voice, preserved in time, singing songs none of us knew existed. It wouldn't just be another record. It would be a resurrection, a way for fans to connect one more time with the Prince of Darkness. Whether these songs are ever released or not, the idea of them is powerful. Somewhere in dusty tape boxes and forgotten reels, Ozzy's voice may still be screaming, laughing, howling into the void, waiting to be heard. The thought alone is enough to send chills down the spine. But what do you think? Should Tony Iommi and the Sabbath camp release those hidden tracks, even if they're raw and unfinished? Or should they stay private, as pieces of history only for the band and Ozzy's family? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button if you want to hear Ozzy's lost songs. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the legends of rock and roll.